It's always tough to follow four spectacular GRC ladies on the panel, but I'm going to attempt to do that. Also, it's tough to be right in front of the cruise, but I'm going to try to do that as well and keep your attention for the next maybe like 20 minutes or so. Sorry. So through the entire year, as a company, we speak to thousands of executives at large and smaller companies, regulators, advisory companies, government bodies, central banks across the globe, across industries and across functions. We see significant amount of diversity in terms of culture, observable behavior, diversity in terms of speed, in terms of reaction time to external competitive political risks, and also diversity in terms of maturity in their digital journeys and risk transformation journeys. And hopefully the last few days, you've been able to interact with a lot of your peers in the industry and got a flavor of these things as well. The other thing is times are changing. There's a lot of change happening in the market, and hopefully I'll be summarizing a little bit of that. But for GRC practitioners particularly, many times the jobs can be very thankless. Things go well, or it's expected. Things go even slightly negative, and fingers may be pointing. But every year, we try to identify emerging patterns taken from the frustrations, the elations, the excitement, and the challenges in the industry. So for the next 2.5 minutes, we'll play a video of just customer quotes that we've aggregated over the last few months. And that kind of summarizes some of the things that are happening, the change that's happening in the market. And just play that out. So a lot has been spoken about first line and raising your hand in the front line. So we're going to play this out in the room right now. I would just request all of you to stand up. And as you see a theme or a quote on the screen that resonates with you strong, please seat yourself down. It's the quickest way to conduct a research and validate the information that we have here. And cheap too. the fact that everyone is seated already, and probably in the first 30 seconds, tells us that all the themes, whether they're coming from Sydney or Abu Dhabi or Zurich or San Francisco, a government entity or a bank or a pharma company, or from the risk group or the auditors, the themes are fairly consistent. So I'm going to attempt to summarize this into 5 broad topics that we are seeing emerging from our customer base. The first and the biggest change we've seen in the last year is really about disruption. Sorry. 63% of the companies, according to a major research, are experiencing disruption right now. One of the largest, sometimes underrepresented risks that companies are facing is that of disruption. Whether it's banks, insurance companies, life sciences, transportation, even college admission processes are getting disrupted, as you know. And how are companies really responding to this? Disruption clearly is a constant. So one is really trying to predict the disruptions where there are opportunities and risks both. As an example, a leading airline company is now creating a risk-weighted customer experience score by bringing a lot of their customer issues, operational issues, quality issues, system-related issues, and aggregating them in reference to the material risks and emerging risks. They're also trying to identify patterns that they may not have seen and are using this to identify lapses in their customer experience, which could be leveraged by competition to either disrupt them or leveraged by this airline to find gaps and competitive advantages. The other thing about disruption is just readiness. Companies are really talking about how to be ready. We've had a lot of conversations around known unknowns and unknown knowns and unknown unknowns. Companies are grappling, and they're also trying to figure out the answer on how to deal with this. Jim Quigley, who was our keynote yesterday, presented his thoughts on the known and unknowns being a concern at the boardrooms. One example of how companies are trying to put their arms around it is very fascinating. A large national railway provider is now responding to risk events in the market and the changes, in different risk events, not just related to internal operations, but also related to their customers, their overall economy of the country, and the resilience of their logistics, entire national logistics infrastructure. And the country actually depends on them to transport some very basic amenities to some remote parts of the country. And any disruption could lead to life-threatening situations. So this is the kind of business impact they're dealing with, and they're trying to figure out how GRC can help prevent that disruption or help them respond to that disruption. The other theme, there are 5 themes. The second theme is about harmonization. 65 of the companies we research believe harmonization is an extremely high priority. Change is rapid. Acquisitions, divestitures, business priorities, shock treatments, audit or risk methodologies that are changing, and very importantly, a phased GRC program where different groups might adopt at different times. And we've talked a lot about that in the last 2 days. So creating what we are calling an agile master data of processes, risk, control, assets is very important. As an example, one of the leading global insurance companies made tens of millions of dollars of investments in the last 5 years into what they called Solve for Now programs, Solve for Now. This led to disparate programs. They rethought the programs again, and the intent now is to bring integrated risk information, not with a big bang approach or a rip and replace approach, but also by building a foundation of data and process frameworks that can bring in some of the legacy systems to coexist with the future program that they're building. So that's one big theme we are finding, and I know a lot of discussion, whether it's the MSIG groups or in some of the practitioners who spoke here, have happened around that. The second thing about harmonization, which companies are talking about, worrying about, is how do you aggregate data from multiple sources and really use that to provide insights and guidance in context. There's a lot of talk around AI and ML and aggregating information, big data marts, data lakes, etc. But a very important and critical component is how do you look at it in the context of the business, which is linked to their goals, objectives as part of the program. So a leading investment firm, as an example, was struggling with aggregating different perspectives, of the same risk from their quality program, from their business resiliency program, from their IT programs, and most importantly, from the business owners. While they created common libraries and taxonomies, they also had to federate their program such that it operates within the guide rails of the set foundation, while business still has the flexibility to accommodate the various contexts of each of the groups. And extremely importantly, business can get insights from the central functions so that they can make decisions more easily. The third big theme is crowdsourcing. Now, crowdsourcing has been there a long time, but with technology changing, companies feel that they can really use technology to actually have concepts of crowdsourcing. So, a couple of concepts. The Frontline really knows the lurking risks. People sometimes sitting in the 1.5 second third line of defense, they're still guessing. The top floor, the executives, they don't know what they don't know, and sometimes they don't know what they know. So first thing here really is about educating the frontline. Yesterday in the CXO panel that we had included Ken Bacon from the board member at Comcast, Sarah from Wells, who runs the regulatory relations group, and John from Salesforce. They spoke a lot about the fact that it's critical that the frontline is constantly communicated about risk culture, expectations of ethical behavior, and this has to be backed by policies. So policies can create the framework, but ultimately, a constant communication is required because change is not easy. And this has become even more critical in the new world where information is flowing fast outside and in both from the organization. The second big point is how do you empower the frontline with information to make what I call in-stream decisions. So it's not post-facto, it's not after the fact, but how do you ensure that you're providing in-stream information? So as an example, at a leading global bank that we work with, they established a foundation of risk and compliance information, but the frontline business users are being provided risk information as they make decisions. Desk traders are advised in policy and governance implications of a trade. Retail loan agents are looking at or are being warned against certain customer segments. Third-party relationships are defined, not just on the best deal, but also on the best value deal. All this while having a single kind of integrated user experience through the transactional systems built for the non-GRC expert, the frontline. And the third thing related to the frontline is how do you aggregate information non-intrusively from the frontline? Peter Bannister, who's in our team and was with Fannie Mae earlier, talked a little bit about how companies are organizing information non-intrusively, and with a raise your hand program, a simple, pervasive way to collect information through a mobile device, which you don't have to interact with the application too heavily, too interactively, a simple way to do that. Yeah. And Andy, our Chief Technology Officer, also showed you an example of that this morning in some of the innovation that's happening. But extremely important that we involve the first line, as we go along. The fourth theme is about foresight. So I feel that there's even more than this number, but the research showed 72% of the companies see foresight as a primary business advantage, not just as a GRC or a risk advantage. And here, clearly, we are seeing the first thing is that the crystal ball is really here. At every global, international, or regional organization, the digitization of the enterprise is happening at breakneck speed. And it's not optional because customers are enforcing that. The digital information is really the key to the next disruption. And this has vastly improved the ability to proactively prevent anomalies and really act as a strategic advisor for these groups, to provide business insights. And that's very important for the GRC function, not just to be providing policing activity, but also insights on how to run the business better. Michael, our CEO, he spoke about AI for GRC and GRC for AI. One is here, and one's coming soon. And the second thing really about insights and data is all about, companies are really realizing the problems related to AI, ML, and robotics as well. Whether it's biased information at times or incomplete information, the need for human-assisted AI is on the rise. One of the leading social media companies in the world is and was using AI to filter politically and socially sensitive information, to ensure that it's served correctly and appropriately to the audience. Probably 98% accuracy wasn't enough. They actually had to get thousands of people, humans. Recently, this is about a year ago, when they started getting hit with a whole slew of negative feedback from the market, they had to get thousands of people to assist them or assist with the bots, for the remaining 2%. And it becomes extremely important that there's a human assistance layer added to that. Last but not the least, and you've heard a lot about this word over the last few days, and we completely believe this, is about agility. 58% of the companies believe agility is as important as stability now. And here, there are really a couple of things here. However large you are as a company, agility is going to become extremely critical because the pace, velocity of information is has changed completely and dramatically. And keeping pace with that through a framework, through the right philosophy, and the right agility is going to be fairly critical. So first is, how do you manage GRC programs to be able to make continuous change without disruption? Frameworks, data models, context, aggregation, dissemination are very important. And companies need this in a more agile way. Like I said, velocity and volume is high, and time to decision is low now for companies. GRC programs have to be adaptable in process as well as in technology. The second thing is really designing programs, and many of you actually have talked to each other about how do you actually prove or at least highlight the value that these programs are bringing, to the organization. How do you design programs to drive outcomes around adoption and time to value versus completing a GRC program? So organizations have been really looking down the path of looking for that mothership of GRC capabilities that cater to all possible current and future eventualities. That always does not work. In fact, it probably does not work ever. The focus has really shifted for a lot of these companies that we're talking to design for our outcomes, because it allows faster time to respond, and recalibration of outcomes as a shift due to market changes at times. For example, at a global tech services company we work with, our program started as an assurance program, but now is being designed to drive predictability into the cash flows, aggregating risks and evaluating possible risk scenarios across 65,000 customer projects that they're engaged with. In summary, whether it is our product strategy, Michael talked about it, Gunjan, our chairman, will talk about it tomorrow a little bit, Andy spoke about it, our CTO. A lot of our customers have spoken about it, but essentially, how do you adapt and build an agile and scalable GRC platform? I'm not just talking technology, but your programs as well, engaging the first line, collaboration, contextual intelligence, mobility, security, content-enabled, so that you can start easy, predictive, and elastic and adaptable. So in summary, it's not easy. And we haven't picked up an easy task since the time we started the company, as the market has kept evolving. Our go-to-market really has been centered on market and customer partnerships with you, and we live on the same principles that our customers are demanding: managing disruption, harmonization, crowdsourcing, foresight, agility, and performing with integrity. Thank you.